I just wanted to ask in particular some questions with regard to the relief that ASIC provides from providing annual financial reports to companies that are part of foreign-controlled groups that are not large. Now, I wanted to ask in particular about Facebook Australia. Is it true that Facebook Australia has not filed any annual financial report for the years 2009 to 2013 because it says it is not part of a large group?
We'll take that on notice if we can, please, Senator. But it is the case that Facebook has indicated that they are able to avail themselves of that particular exemption to the law. That's correct.
Well, they say they are able to. That's because they must be permitted to under the law. Did ASIC actually, through Class Order 98/98, give relief to those companies? Is it an ASIC actual action that has allowed these companies to avoid putting in annual financial reports?
As I say, I'd prefer to take that question on notice if I can, just to make sure that I get you the correct answer.
Well, this is an issue with regard to tax evasion, as you would be very well aware. There's been a lot about this. This is an actual ASIC order. Can you tell me whether or not ASIC made that order?
Well, certainly ASIC makes a number of financial reporting relief orders. The order you referred to, which is in relation to small proprietary companies controlled by foreign-owned companies, that's an order that's been in place, as I understand, since 1998. It's up to companies to work out whether they fall within the terms of that order, at least initially. Then ASIC has an active program to identify and follow up on companies that appear to be required to lodge financial reports but in fact have not done so.
So has ASIC pursued Facebook? Because I don't think under any stretch of the imagination you could suggest that Facebook is anything other than a large company.
As I say, I'd prefer to take that question on notice if I may.
Well, I'm
taking it on notice.
Sure.
Assume you're saying you have to check your facts whether that's the case or not. Is that something you could possibly do over the lunch break?
I'm not sure. I'll make some inquiries, but I'm not sure.
So what I'm asking is that the case, and on what basis? Why hasn't ASIC followed that up? And I'm also asking on notice then, if you can't give it to me now,
sure?
How many subsidiaries of large foreign-controlled corporations are exempted under this same provision from making annual financial reports? How many?
I doubt we'll be able to provide you the answer to that question, and the reason is that these exemptions operate in such a way that, if my memory is right, you don't need to notify us if you're relying on the exemption. So if you meet the various conditions that are set out, you are able, as of right, to rely on that particular exemption.
So basically, any company can just say, oh no, the company that owns us is a small company and therefore we're exempt.
Any company can take the risk of breaching the law and risk the consequences that penalties will flow when it's found that they are breaching the law.
Okay, so risk that penalties might flow. What is the audit that ASIC does on all these relief orders to actually check out whether this is true or not?
In terms of what checking do we do to make sure that people are complying with individual class orders, typically we would not undertake such a process. That's part of our general surveillance to see that people are complying with the law. You just said that they'd be running the risk of penalties being imposed, and you've just told me you don't even audit it, so it would suggest there's no risk. You're asking me whether we go through each and every class order and make sure that people, and that extends way beyond financial reporting. We have very, very many class orders that cover disclosure, takeovers, financial reporting. If you're asking me, do we run an active program to identify companies that appear to be required to lodge financial reports but do not? The answer is yes, we run an active program to identify and follow up on companies that appear to be required to lodge financial reports but are not so lodging them.
Well, this is the appear to be required to bit because you have moved to say that if they're a subsidiary of a company that is not large, they don't have to. So their legal teams would say they don't have to.
Correct.
If they declare their parent company to be small. What I'm asking is, what actual auditing do we do to make sure that we are not being conned by a company like Facebook, by a company like, well, any other of the large corporations?
So just to make sure that I understand exactly what you're asking for details of what the program is, what we do to identify those companies that should be reporting but may not be reporting. Is that correct, Senator?
Well, and I'm asking you how many companies in this regard are currently exempted from providing financial accounts, and I'm asking in particular about Facebook, and I'm asking in particular whether an audit has ever been done or any investigation ever been done on Facebook Australia to see whether it is a wholly owned subsidiary of a small company.
I'm happy to take those questions on notice. I'll see whether I can get some answers.
Specific question, if you can get it for the
during the break.
Send it on.
But I'm happy to take those questions.
And
on
the
notice.
Just ask a follow-up on that.
Sure.
Have you ever prosecuted a company for failing to,
Oh,
or for incorrectly relying on this particular exemption?
Last year we had 7 successful criminal prosecutions and secured fines of between $6,000 and $25,000 for 7 public companies which had failed.
For this particular exemption, Mr. Medcraft, this particular issue that
This
they
was with
relied on there being a small parent company? Is that
this was with respect to an assertion that they weren't subject to the obligation to...
so based on a range of...
I can't tell you whether they were all within the class order or whether they were asserting that under the law, the rest of the law, which means that small proprietary companies don't need to lodge.
Okay.
But yes, we do.
Can you provide those on notice, the details of those companies that were...
And can I ask that if you haven't done an audit on Facebook Australia, if you will do it specific to this requirement, because I'm very keen to know on what basis you classify Facebook to be a small company.
So we'll look forward to that after the break, a response from the department.
Whatever you can.
And
whatever.
Second question on the same issue that goes to tax evasion. I'm trying to understand the line between ASIC and the tax office in regard to ASIC's database for the purposes of obtaining audited financial reports of Australian companies that are owned by multinationals. So I'm asking, does the tax office have access to ASIC's database in order to do that? And if not, why not? Is that a legal requirement, you don't provide it, or do you provide it under certain circumstances? What is the story?
My understanding is we do provide it, but I'll take that on notice just to double check.
Sorry, Warren, if it may assist, Senator, if you like, a mirror image of our database is available to the tax office. So they can access that every day, every minute of the day. They can see what they need to see. Whatever financial records are required to be lodged by any company, the ATO, just like any other party, is then able to see those lodgements.
Okay, thank you. And can you tell me, is ASIC aware of any systemic accounting irregularities in the audited financial reports of Australian large proprietary companies? For example, failure to comply with accounting standards, failure to lodge accounts on time, or accounts that are missing altogether?
Yeah, so in terms of financial reporting surveillance of a selected number of larger proprietary companies, my recollection is that we did do financial reporting surveillance, so we went over their accounts to see whether we're happy. I will check the figure, but my recollection is in around 4% of cases. We did have problems. We raised those and the problems were resolved one way or the other.
And is there any way that we can tighten up those reporting practices of the large proprietary companies so that we get a more stringent response?
Yeah, I mean, the financial reporting requirements in Australia really mirror international requirements, so they're international financial reporting standards. They've been largely adopted here in Australia. There is a separate standard setter, which is the Accounting and Assurance Standards Board. They are responsible for setting the accounting standards here in Australia, so it might be a question that's better directed to that body.
For, I might add that for large proprietary companies, we do also, under that program of following up on non-lodgements, we do also have a program of following up firstly to inquire of the company whether they fit within the definition of being a small proprietary company, because otherwise they're a large one, and then follow up on their accounts.
Senator Dastiari.